Judge Boyd, I've silenced cities with one phone call. Deny me bail, and you'll learn what silence costs. Everyone you protect included.
What happens when a man who has silenced entire cities with a single phone call tries to silence a judge who technically doesn't exist? This isn't just a hearing. This is a confrontation between the law of the jungle and the law of absolute consequences. Marco Varga walked into Judge Boyd's courtroom, not like a prisoner, but like a landlord inspecting a property he intends to demolish. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't look at the gallery. He stared straight at the empty judge's bench with a look that usually precedes a funeral. Before we continue, less than 5% of viewers are subscribed. If you believe that true justice should never bow to terror, hit that subscribe button right now. What happened next proved that you can intimidate a witness, you can bribe a politician, but you cannot scare a nightmare. The courtroom feels suffocating today. The air is heavy, thick with a tension you can taste. That's because Marco El Carnicero Varga is in the room. At 38 years old, he is the head of the Varga Cartel, an organization responsible for turning safe neighborhoods into war zones. He is not wearing handcuffs. His high-priced lawyers manage to get them removed for the hearing. He adjusts his Italian silk tie, smoothing it over a neck tattooed with symbols that terrify police officers. He doesn't sit in the defendant's chair. He stands behind it, resting his hands on the leather backrest, drumming his fingers. His eyes scan the room, dissecting everyone. The bailiff, a veteran officer named Miller, has his hand resting instinctively near his belt. He knows who Varga is. Everyone knows. Tell the old man to hurry up, Varga whispers to his lead attorney. His voice is like gravel grinding on glass. I have business in Mexico tonight. The attorney, a man who sweats despite the air conditioning, nods nervously. Please, Marco, be patient. This is Judge Boyd. He's different. Varga laughs. It's a quiet, terrifying sound. Different? He's a man in a dress, holding a wooden hammer. I buy men like him for breakfast. He turns around and looks at the public gallery. Drop a comment if you've ever seen pure evil look you in the eye. But Varga isn't looking for fans. He's looking for fear. And he finds it. Sitting in the third row, huddled into herself, is Elena Rodriguez. She is 68 years old. She wears a simple black dress, the kind worn by widows. Her hands are shaking, clutching a rosary. She is the only witness brave enough to show her face today. Varga locks eyes with her. He doesn't say a word. He just smiles and runs a finger across his throat. Elena gasps and looks down, tears streaming instantly. 3 weeks ago, Varga's men tried to seize the community center. Elena ran for 30 years to turn it into a distribution hub. Elena stood in the doorway and refused to move. Varga didn't send his men. He came himself. He didn't use a gun. He used his fists. He left her battered on the steps of the building she built with her own hands, and then he burned it to the ground while she watched. He calls it business expansion. Elena calls it the end of her world. All rise, Officer Miller announces, his voice tighter than usual. Usually, there is noise. Today, the silence is so deep, you can hear the hum of the lights. Judge Boyd enters. He doesn't look like the other judges Varga has bought. He moves with a predatory stillness. He wears reading glasses, but he isn't reading. He is staring directly at Marco Varga. Judge Boyd doesn't sit immediately. He stands behind his high bench, looking down at the cartel boss. Varga doesn't look away. He puffs out his chest, challenging the authority in the room. Sit down, Judge Boyd says. His voice isn't loud, but it carries a frequency that makes the hair on your arms stand up. Varga remains standing. He smirks. I prefer to stand. My back hurts from your uncomfortable chairs. Judge Boyd slowly takes off his glasses. In this room, Mr. Varga, you don't have preferences. You have instructions. Sit down, or I will have you shackled to the floor like the animal you are pretending not to be. Varga's smile vanishes. The air in the room just dropped 10 degrees. Marco Varga sits. He doesn't do it quickly. He moves with agonizing slowness, smoothing his suit jacket, adjusting his cuffs, making the entire courtroom wait for him. It is a calculated move. He is telling everyone that even his compliance is a choice, not a surrender. His lead attorney, Mr. Sterling, immediately steps forward. Sterling is a man who costs $5,000 an hour. He has a smile that looks like it was bought from a catalog and a reputation for burying the truth under mountains of paperwork. Your Honor, Sterling begins, his voice booming with practiced confidence. We move for immediate dismissal. My client is a legitimate businessman, a pillar of the community who is being targeted by a police force desperate for headlines. These charges are nothing more than fantasy. Judge Boyd doesn't look at the lawyer. He keeps his eyes locked on Varga. Fantasy, Boyd repeats. The word hangs in the air like smoke. Mr. Sterling, you are here to speak on points of law. Do not mistake this courtroom for a press conference. If you perform for the cameras again, I will have you removed. Sterling blinks, his smile faltering. He clears his throat. Of course, Your Honor. We simply request that bail be set at a reasonable amount. Mr. Varga has significant ties to the community and is not a flight risk. Judge Boyd finally looks down at the docket in front of him. He flips a page. The sound is sharp in the silent room. Let's review these ties to the community, shall we? Count 1, aggravated assault on a senior citizen. Count 2, arson in the first degree. Count 3, criminal intimidation. Count 4, racketeering. Judge Boyd looks up. Mr. Varga, it seems your business model involves breaking elderly women's bones and burning down charities. Varga leans forward towards the microphone. He ignores his lawyer's hand, trying to stop him. That old woman, Varga says, pointing a finger at Elena without even looking at her, was squatting on property that belongs to future development. It was an eviction. Accidents happen during construction. Elena Rodriguez flinches in the gallery. She clutches her rosary so tight her knuckles turn white. She wants to scream that he laughed while he struck her, but her voice is trapped in her throat. Judge Boyd's expression doesn't change, but his voice drops an octave. Construction. Is that what you call it when you pour gasoline on a building that has served this neighborhood for 30 years? Varga shrugs. Progress is messy, Judge. You should know that. You wear a robe. I wear a suit. We both enforce rules. Mine are just more direct. The audacity of the statement sends a ripple through the courtroom. Varga is equating his brutality with the law. He is testing the boundaries, seeing if Judge Boyd will crack. Mr. Sterling, Boyd says, turning back to the lawyer, your client seems to be under the impression that he is entering a negotiation. Let me correct that error. My client merely means to say, Sterling, start. Your client, Boyd interrupts, is used to rooms where money is the only language spoken. He is used to silence being purchased and fear being the currency of exchange. Judge Boyd leans forward over the bench. But look around you, Mr. Varga. Look at the walls. Look at the flag. This is the one place left in this city where your money is just paper. Varga chuckles darkly. Everything has a price, old man. Even you. Maybe you just haven't heard my offer yet. The bailiff takes a step forward, hand on his taser. Judge Boyd raises a hand to stop him. An offer, Boyd muses. Interesting. Usually, men in your position offer threats. You must be feeling generous today. I am a generous man. Varga smiles, showing teeth that look too white, too perfect. I build parks. I fund schools. I keep the streets safe from the disorganized criminals. I bring order. Without me, this city eats itself. You bring silence, Judge Boyd corrects him. There is a difference between peace and the quiet of a graveyard. You claim you are a necessary evil. Today, we are going to see just how necessary you really are. Judge Boyd picks up a pen. The prosecution has requested bail be denied. Mr. Sterling, you have 30 seconds to give me one reason why a man who threatens witnesses in open court should be allowed to walk out that door. Sterling wipes sweat from his forehead. Your Honor, the Constitution guarantees. The Constitution, Boyd cuts in, guarantees the right to due process, not the right to terrorize victims while awaiting trial. You have wasted 10 seconds. Varga stops smiling. He realizes, for the first time, that the script isn't going the way it usually does. In other courtrooms, the judge listens to the lawyer. In other courtrooms, the technicalities buy time. Here, time seems to be running out fast. My client will post $5 million cash right now, Sterling blurts out. And surrender his passport. Judge Boyd writes something down. He takes a long pause. The silence stretches until it becomes uncomfortable. Then, he looks up. $5 million, Boyd says. That is a lot of money to most people. To Mr. Varga, that is roughly 2 days of operation. It is pocket change. Boyd slams the docket shut. Bail is denied. The sound of the gavel denying bail echoes like a gunshot. For a split second, Marco Varga doesn't react. He freezes, his brain processing a word he hasn't heard in 2 decades. No. Then, the mask of the civilized businessman cracks. Varga stands up abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. His lawyer, Sterling, lunges to grab his arm, whispering frantically, but Varga shakes him off like a fly. Denied? Varga's voice is no longer gravel, it is pure venom. He points a finger directly at Judge Boyd. You are making a mistake, old man. A very expensive mistake. Do you know who runs this city? Do you know who keeps the lights on? The courtroom security officers step forward, hands on their holsters. The tension snaps tight. People in the gallery hold their breath. This is the moment usually edited out of the news, the moment the criminal threatens the state. Judge Boyd doesn't call for order. He doesn't look at the officers. He leans back in his chair, folding his hands calmly. He looks at Varga with the curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen in a jar. I know exactly who you are, Mr. Varga, Boyd says softly. You are a man who mistakes fear for respect. You think because people lower their eyes when you walk by, they are bowing. They are not bowing, they are hiding. Varga slams his hand on the defense table. The loud crack makes Elena jump in her seat. I am a job creator. I am a leader. You sit here in your costume and judge me? I have done more for these people than your entire corrupt system. You destroy, Boyd corrects him. You built an empire on addiction and extortion. And now that you are facing consequences, you are throwing a tantrum like a child who has been told it is time for bed. Varga's face turns a dark shade of red. He turns his head slowly, scanning the room until his eyes lock onto Elena Rodriguez again. The threat is palpable. He doesn't need to speak. His eyes promise violence. He is silently telling her, this is your fault, and you will pay. Elena starts to tremble uncontrollably. She looks ready to bolt from the room. Look at me! Judge Boyd's voice thunders. It is sudden and commanding, cutting the invisible line of terror Varga was building between himself and the witness. Varga turns back to the bench, startled. You do not look at her, Boyd says, his voice dropping back to that terrifying calm. You look at me. She is not your property. She is a citizen of this state. And right now, she is under my protection. If you look at her again with anything other than an apology, I will have you gagged. Do you understand? Varga laughs, but it sounds forced now. Protection? You can't protect anyone. You go home at night, Judge. You drive a car. You have a family. The threat is overt. Sterling puts his head in his hands. He knows he has lost control of his client. He knows Varga just committed a new felony on the record. Judge Boyd stands up slowly. He walks to the edge of the dais, towering over the defendant. Is that a threat, Mr. Varga? Boyd asks. It is a fact of life, Varga sneers. Accidents happen. Let the record show. Boyd speaks to the court reporter, without looking away from the cartel boss, that the defendant has just threatened a judicial officer in open court. Add a count of terroristic threats to the docket. Boyd looks back at Varga. You mention my family. You mention my safety. You seem to think that I am part of the world you control, the world where fear dictates action. Boyd takes off his reading glasses and places them on the bench. But you are not in the streets anymore, Marco. You are in my domain. And in my domain, the boogeyman does not scare us. We lock the boogeyman in a cage and throw away the key. You think a cage can hold me? Varga hisses. I run the prisons too. Not where you are going, Boyd replies mysteriously. Mr. Sterling, your client seems to believe he is above the law. We are going to test that theory. Since bail is denied, Mr. Varga will be remanded to custody immediately. Wait, Sterling interjects, desperate to salvage something. Your Honor, we request protective custody. My client has enemies. Placing him in general population would be a death sentence. Varga looks at his lawyer with disgust. I don't need protection. I am the danger. Judge Boyd smiles, but there is no warmth in it. Finally, we agree on something. You are a danger, Mr. Varga, which is why you are going to a facility designed for dangerous men, but not the one you think. Boyd gestures to the bailiff. Officer Miller, take the defendant into custody. And Miller, use the cuffs. Varga steps back as Miller approaches. For a second, it looks like he might resist. His fists clench, the muscles in his neck coil. The air in the room screams with the potential for violence. The standoff between Marco Varga and Officer Miller lasts for 3 agonizing seconds. In those 3 seconds, you can see Varga calculating the odds. He looks at Miller's hand on the taser. He looks at the 2 other deputies flanking the exit. He looks at Judge Boyd, who hasn't flinched. Varga exhales, a sharp, dismissive sound through his nose. He holds out his wrists. "Put them on," Varga sneers. "Make sure they are loose. I won't be wearing them for long." Miller snaps the cuffs on. The metallic click-click echoes through the silent courtroom. It is a sound that usually signals the end of a criminal's power, but for Varga, it looks like an inconvenience, like waiting in line at the DMV. As he is led to the defense table, now shackled to a metal ring on the floor, he winks at his lawyer. "Call the mayor," Varga whispers, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Remind him who paid for his campaign." Judge Boyd ignores the comment, though he undoubtedly heard it. He turns his attention to the gallery. "Miss Rodriguez," Boyd says. His voice changes completely. The cold steel he used on Varga vanishes, replaced by a gentle, grandfatherly warmth. "Please, step forward." Elena Rodriguez freezes. She looks at the back of Varga's head. Even shackled, he radiates malice. She looks at the door, thinking about running. "Elena," Judge Boyd says softly, "look at me. In this room, he is just a man in a chair. He has no soldiers here. He has no power here. You are safe." Slowly, painfully, Elena stands up. She walks to the witness stand, clutching her rosary so hard the beads are pressing into her skin. As she passes Varga, he coughs, a sharp, aggressive bark meant to make her jump. She does. "Officer Miller," Boyd says without looking up, "if the defendant makes another sound, you have my permission to use the gag. Do I make myself clear?" Varga leans back, feigning innocence, but he stays quiet. Elena takes her seat. She looks tiny in the witness box. "Miss Rodriguez," the prosecutor begins gently, "tell the court what happened on the night of November 3rd. Elena takes a deep breath. Her voice is barely a whisper. I was locking up the center. We had just finished the after-school program. The children had just left." "Speak up," Varga's lawyer, Sterling, snaps from his seat. "We can't hear you." "Mr. Sterling," Boyd interjects, his voice cutting like a razor. "The microphone works perfectly fine. Your hearing seems to be the only thing malfunctioning. Sit down." Boyd nods to Elena. "Take your time, ma'am." "He came with 3 SUVs, Elena continues, her voice gaining a little strength. "Mr. Varga got out. He told me the neighborhood was changing. He said my building was in the way." She pauses, wiping a tear. "I told him no. I told him my father built that place. I told him we feed 50 families a week. I told him God was watching." Varga snorts, a sound of pure derision. "And what did Mr. Varga do?" the prosecutor asks. Elena trembles. "He laughed. He said God doesn't come to this side of the city anymore. Then he grabbed me." She touches her cheek, where a faint bruise is still visible under makeup. "He threw me down the stairs. I heard my hip snap. I couldn't move." The courtroom is dead silent. Even the court reporter has stopped typing for a second. "And then he took a gas can from his trunk." Elena sobs. "He poured it on the front door. He lit a match. He stood over me while I was bleeding on the sidewalk, and he lit a cigar with the same match." Elena looks directly at Judge Boyd. "He watched it burn, Judge. He watched the library burn, the kitchen, the children's drawings. He smiled the whole time. He told me, 'Consider this an eviction notice.'" "Objection." Sterling stands up. "Hearsay. My client denies being present." "Your client," Boyd says, staring at Varga, "is on security footage smoking a cohiba while a landmark burns to the ground." Overruled. Boyd looks at Varga. "Is something funny, Mr. Varga?" Varga is smiling. He is shaking his head, looking at the ceiling as if bored by a tedious story. "She tells a good sad story," Varga says, not standing up. Very dramatic. "But she forgets to mention she didn't own the deed. It was a squatter's den. I cleaned up the neighborhood. I did the city a favor." Judge Boyd stares at him. The air pressure in the room seems to drop again. "A favor," Boyd repeats. You think burning down a soup kitchen is civic duty? It's urban renewal, Varga says arrogantly. You want to build a skyscraper. You have to clear the weeds. Weeds, Boyd says. That is what you call the people of this city? Weeds? Only the ones who don't produce, Varga replies. The weak, the poor. They take up space. I create value. I create wealth. You create graveyards, Boyd counters. You speak of value, Mr. Varga. Let me tell you about value. That building you burned, it was worth more in 1 hour than your entire organization has generated in 10 years, because it created hope. You create nothing but ash. Varga leans forward, the chains rattling. Hope doesn't pay the rent, Judge. Power pays the rent. And right now, my lawyers are filing an appeal that will have me out of here by dinner. So enjoy your little speech. It changes nothing. Judge Boyd leans back. A small, unreadable smile touches his lips. An appeal, Boyd says. Yes, I expected that. Mr. Sterling is very efficient. Boyd picks up a new folder that has just been handed to him by the court clerk. It is a thick, red folder. However, Boyd continues, opening the file. There has been a development while we were listening to Miss Rodriguez. A development that might complicate your dinner plans. Varga narrows his eyes. For the first time since the handcuffs went on, he looks wary. What is that? Varga asks. This, Judge Boyd says, tapping the red folder, is a warrant, but not from the city and not from the state. Boyd looks up, his eyes gleaming with absolute authority. Mr. Varga, have you ever heard of the RICO Act? The acronym RICO hangs in the air like a guillotine blade waiting to drop. For the first time, Marco Varga does not have a retort. He does not have a clever insult. He blinks. Once, twice, his mind racing to catch up with the catastrophe unfolding in front of him. RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It is the nuclear option. It is the tool the government uses to take down entire organizations, not just individuals. It means 20 years per count. It means asset forfeiture. It means the end. I see you know the term, Judge Boyd says, his voice devoid of emotion. It is the sound of your world ending, Mr. Varga. This is a municipal court, Sterling shouts, his voice cracking. He is no longer the slick, expensive lawyer. He is a man watching his paycheck evaporate. You have no jurisdiction to bring federal charges. This is a stunt. Sit down, Mr. Sterling, Boyd commands, not even looking at him. Or I will have you joined as a co-conspirator. Do not think I haven't seen the wire transfers from the Cayman Islands that pay for your Italian suits. Sterling shuts his mouth instantly. He sits down, pulling his briefcase closer, looking like he wants to disappear. Varga looks at his lawyer, then back at the judge. The arrogance is fading, replaced by the primal panic of a predator who realizes he has walked into a trap. You can't do this, Varga growls, but the gravel in his voice is shaking. I have people. I have connections in D.C. You have nothing, Boyd interrupts. While you were sitting here, bragging about your power, federal agents were executing warrants on 18 of your properties. The warehouse on 5th Street, raided. The consulting firm that launders your money, seized. Your accounts in Zurich, frozen. Boyd opens the red folder and pulls out a single sheet of paper. He holds it up. And that $5 million you offered for bail? Boyd smiles. A cold, thin expression. The Department of Justice has just flagged it as proceeds of criminal enterprise. It has been seized. You are currently indigent, Mr. Varga. You are broke. Varga lunges. It is an instinctual reaction to losing everything. He throws himself against the defense table, straining against the handcuffs, roaring like a wounded animal. The heavy oak table shifts a few inches, scraping loudly against the floor. You lie! Varga screams. I built this city. I own you. I will kill you. I will kill all of you. The gallery gasps. Elena covers her ears. The bailiff, Miller, draws his taser, the red dot dancing on Varga's chest. Do it! Varga challenges Miller, his eyes wide and manic. Shoot me. Better that than this. Stand down, Officer Miller, Boyd says calmly. He hasn't moved an inch. He watches Varga's meltdown with the detached interest of a doctor watching a fever break. Let him scream. Boyd says. Listen to it. That is not the sound of a boss. That is not the sound of a leader. That is the sound of a coward realizing he is irrelevant. Varga stops screaming. He is panting heavily, sweat dripping down his face. He glares at Boyd with pure hatred. Irrelevant? Varga spits. My name is on the streets. My name is fear. Even in prison, I will run things. I will order hits from my cell. You think walls stop me? Judge Boyd closes the folder. He leans forward, resting his chin on his hands. You seem to be under the impression that you are going to a normal prison, Marco. You think you will be in general population, holding court in the yard, trading cigarettes and favors? Boyd shakes his head slowly. You are going to ADX Florence, the Supermax, the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Varga's face goes pale. Even the toughest criminals have nightmares about Florence. It is a place of sensory deprivation. 23 hours a day in a concrete box. No human contact, no phone calls, no running things. There are no gangs in Supermax, Boyd continues, his voice dropping to a whisper that carries to the back of the room. There is no business there. There is only you, a concrete slab, and the silence. You want to silence this city. The federal government is going to grant your wish. They are going to silence you permanently. You can't, Varga stammers. I have rights. You forfeited your rights when you burned down a community center with a grandmother inside, Boyd replies. But I haven't been convicted, Varga shouts, grasping at straws. This is America, innocent until proven guilty. Oh, you will get your trial, Boyd assures him. But not here. Not in a state court where you can buy the jury. You will be tried in a federal court with a federal jury and evidence collected by the FBI for the last 5 years. Boyd gestures to the back of the room. The doors open. 2 men in dark suits enter. They do not look like local police. They move with military precision. U.S. Marshals, Boyd announces. They are here to take custody of you. State charges are dropped in favor of federal prosecution under RICO statutes. Varga looks at the marshals. He looks at his useless lawyer. He looks at Elena Rodriguez, the small old woman he tried to crush, who is now watching his empire crumble. No, Varga whispers. No, this wasn't the plan. Plans change, Judge Boyd says. But before you go, Marco, there is one last thing. One piece of business we need to settle right here, in my courtroom. Boyd picks up a piece of evidence from the bench. It is a charred piece of wood, a remnant of the community center Varga burned down. You like fire, don't you, Mr. Varga? Boyd asks. You like to watch things burn. Judge Boyd holds the charred piece of wood like a sacred relic. He turns it over in his hands, letting the soot stain his fingers. For a moment, the only sound in the room is the heavy breathing of Marco Varga, who is still pinned by the gaze of the U.S. Marshals. This, Boyd says quietly, was part of the doorframe where Miss Rodriguez stood every morning to greet the children. It is carbon now, useless, dead. Boyd looks up. You thought that by turning wood into ash, you were turning hope into fear. That is the mistake of the destroyer. You do not understand that some things grow stronger when they are burned. Varga sneers, trying to muster the last shreds of his bravado. It's just a building. It's real estate. You talk like it's a person. To you, it is real estate, Boyd corrects. To this neighborhood, it was a sanctuary, and you took it away because you wanted a warehouse for your poison. Judge Boyd puts the wood down. He picks up a document, a seizure order signed by a federal magistrate. I told you your assets were frozen, Marco, but I didn't tell you what we are going to do with them. You see, under the federal forfeiture laws, seized assets from criminal enterprises can be used for community restitution. Boyd smiles. It is the smile of a chess player delivering checkmate. That $5 million cash you brought for bail, the 18 properties we seized this morning, the fleets of luxury cars. Boyd looks at Elena Rodriguez. Miss Rodriguez, do you have an architect? Elena blinks, confused, wiping tears from her face. Your Honor, you are going to need one, Boyd continues, because I am ordering the immediate liquidation of Marco Varga's seized assets. The proceeds will be placed into a blind trust solely for the reconstruction of the community center. Varga's eyes bulge. You can't do that. That's my money. I earned that. You stole it, Boyd snaps. You bled this city dry to get it. And now, the city is taking it back. Boyd leans forward, his voice dripping with satisfaction. We aren't just going to rebuild the center, Marco. We are going to make it bigger, better, state-of-the-art classrooms, a new kitchen, a gymnasium, and it is all going to be paid for by you. Varga pulls at his chains, his face purple with rage. The irony is suffocating him. The empire he built to destroy the community is now going to be the foundation of its rebirth. I will sue, Varga screams. I will burn it down again. You won't be burning anything where you are going, Boyd says coldly. You won't even see the sun, let alone a match. Boyd turns to the court clerk. Let the record show that the new facility will be named the Elena Rodriguez Center for Hope. And on the cornerstone, in very small letters, I want a plaque that reads, funded by the involuntary donation of the Varga Cartel. The gallery erupts. It starts as a murmur, then a laugh, then applause. People are standing up. For years, they lived in fear of Varga's name. Now, they are laughing at him. The spell of terror is broken. Varga looks around wildly. He sees the faces of the people he intimidated. They aren't looking at the floor anymore. They are looking at him, and they are smiling. Silence! Varga roars at the crowd. I am the king. I am El Carnicero. You are a memory, Boyd says, his voice cutting through the noise. And soon, you won't even be that. Boyd nods to the marshals. Get him out of my sight. The marshals step forward. They don't handle him gently. They grab Varga by the arms. For a second, Varga digs his heels in. He looks at Judge Boyd one last time, his eyes burning with a promise of vengeance that he will never be able to keep. This isn't over, Boyd, Varga spits. I have brothers. I have sons. And if they step into my city, Boyd says, picking up his gavel, I have a cell waiting for them right next to yours. The marshals drag Varga toward the side exit. He is shouting obscenities, struggling, the chains clanking loudly. But as he passes the witness stand, something happens. Elena Rodriguez stands up. She doesn't cower. She doesn't hide. She walks right up to the railing, inches from the man who broke her hip and burned her life's work. Varga stops struggling. He looks at the small old woman. Elena Rodriguez does not shout. She does not spit. She stands just inches from the man who ordered her execution, and she looks him in the eye. For a moment, Varga stops fighting the marshals. He waits for her to scream, to curse, to give him the reaction he thrives on. Instead, Elena reaches into her pocket. The marshals tense up, but she pulls out nothing more than her cheap plastic rosary. You said you are a king, Elena says, her voice steady and clear in the quiet room. But a king protects his people. You are just a wolf. And wolves always end up in a cage? She presses the rosary into the palm of his shackled hand. Keep it, she whispers. Where you are going, Marco, you will need God more than I do. Varga stares at the plastic beads in his hand. For the first time all day, he looks truly shaken. The insult didn't break him. The prison sentence didn't break him. But this act of pity from the woman he tried to destroy pierces his armor. It confirms what Judge Boyd said. He is irrelevant. He is not a monster to be feared. He is a soul to be pitied. Move! The marshal barks, yanking Varga toward the door. Varga stumbles. He drops the rosary. It hits the floor with a soft click. He looks back one last time, not with rage, but with a hollow, haunted expression. The heavy oak doors swing shut behind him, sealing his fate. The sound of the lock engaging is final. The courtroom remains silent for a long moment. All eyes turn to the rosary, lying on the floor where the king of the city once stood. Judge Boyd clears his throat. The sound breaks the spell. Officer Miller, Boyd says gently, please pick that up and return it to Miss Rodriguez. Miller retrieves the beads and hands them back to Elena. She clutches them to her chest, closes her eyes, and finally lets out the breath she seems to have been holding for weeks. She sits down, burying her face in her hands, weeping silently. But these aren't tears of terror anymore. They are tears of release. Judge Boyd looks out at the gallery. He sees the reporters typing furiously. He sees the citizens who came to watch the show. Let this be a reminder, Boyd addresses the room, his voice returning to its measured, judicial cadence. There is a myth in this city, a myth that if you are loud enough, rich enough, and cruel enough, the law cannot touch you. Today, we buried that myth. He picks up his pen and signs the final order on the docket. We often confuse fear with power, Boyd continues. Marco Varga had the power to break bones and burn buildings. But look at Miss Rodriguez. She had the power to stand up when everyone else stayed seated. She had the power to look her abuser in the eye and offer him mercy. Boyd looks directly at the camera at the back of the room, breaking the fourth wall for a split second. That is true power. That is the only kind of power that lasts. The rest, it is just noise. And as we have seen today, noise can be silenced. Boyd turns to his clerk. Clear the docket. I believe we are done here. All rise, Officer Miller shouts. Everyone stands. This time, they don't do it out of obligation. They do it out of respect. As Judge Boyd descends from the bench and disappears into his chambers, nobody moves to leave. They stay for a moment, looking at the empty defendant's chair, savoring the feeling of a world that is suddenly a little bit safer. Outside the courthouse, the news crews are already setting up, but inside, Elena Rodriguez stays in her seat. She looks up at the ceiling, at the American flag, at the empty bench. A young woman from the prosecutor's office approaches her. Miss Rodriguez, are you ready to go? We have a car waiting to take you to a hotel for safety. Elena smiles. It is the first time she has smiled in a month. No, Elena says. Take me to the community center. I have work to do. But it's gone, the young woman says gently. It's just ash. The building is gone, Elena corrects her. The center is right here. She touches her heart. And thanks to that judge, I have a lot of planning to do. I want the new kitchen to be big enough to feed 100 people. 1 year later, ADX Florence is a place designed to crush the human spirit. In cell block H, there is no sunlight. There are no sounds of the city. There is only the hum of the ventilation system and the echo of steel doors closing. Marco Varga sits on the edge of his concrete bunk. He has lost 30 pounds. The expensive Italian suits are gone, replaced by a dull orange jumpsuit. The tattoos on his neck, once symbols of terror that made police officers hesitate, are now just ink on the skin of prisoner number 8, 4921. He stares at the wall. There is no phone to make calls, no soldiers to command, no empire to run. Judge Boyd promised him silence, and the federal government delivered. In here, Marco Varga is not a king. He is not a boss. He is just a memory that is fading a little more every day. 1,200 miles away, the sound is very different. On the corner of 5th and Main, where a charred skeleton of a building once stood, a brass band is playing. Hundreds of people fill the street. There are balloons, streamers, and the smell of barbecue. Standing in front of a gleaming new building is Elena Rodriguez. She is wearing a new dress, bright blue, the color of the sky. Beside her stands Officer Miller, and behind them, a crowd of children waiting to run through the front doors. Above the entrance, large letters gleam in the sun, the Elena Rodriguez Center for Hope. And just to the right of the door, exactly as ordered, is a small bronze plaque. People stop to read it and chuckle. Funded by the involuntary donation of the Varga Cartel, Elena picks up a giant pair of scissors. She looks out at the crowd. She spots a black sedan parked quietly across the street. The window is rolled down just an inch. She knows who is inside. She nods, a small, grateful gesture. From inside the car, Judge Boyd nods back. He doesn't get out. He doesn't need the applause. He watches as the ribbon is cut and the children flood into the new gymnasium. He watches a neighborhood that was once held hostage by fear, now celebrating its freedom. Driver, Boyd says quietly, we can go now. As the car pulls away, Judge Boyd looks down at his tablet. The news is playing a clip of the opening. The reporter is talking about the miracle of the center's resurrection. Boyd turns off the screen. It wasn't a miracle, he says to the empty car. It was just a correction. The world gets out of balance. Men like Varga think they can tip the scales forever. My job is simply to put the weight back where it belongs. He looks out the window at the city skyline. Fear is a currency, Boyd muses. But like all currency, it can be devalued. Varga spent his life buying terror, but in the end, he couldn't afford the price of admission to a civilized society. The story of the cartel boss and the judge who doesn't exist ends here. But the lesson remains: what happens when a man who rules by fear meets a man who cannot be intimidated? He learns that his power was an illusion. He learns that a gavel, in the right hands, is heavier than a gun. And he learns that the loudest sound in the world isn't a scream, it's the sound of a community laughing at the man who tried to break them. If this story satisfied your need for justice, hit that like button. If you believe that no one is above the law, share this video. And if you want to see more bullies get exactly what they deserve, subscribe and turn on notifications, because in Judge Boyd's courtroom, the docket is never empty and the verdict is always final.